The world needs this. It's what we are meant to be. Humanity knows they need it and have always tried to create it. Clubs and bars, societies and stadiums, temples, streets and associations. We are souls that need community, a common cause and a place to belong. But this is God's design, the church. But you've probably only seen a shadow of it. Humankind took it and warped it. Religion got hold of it, shut the door and put a lock on it. But please, see it for how it was meant to be. Turn misunderstanding upside down. Wipe clean your history. It's not the place in which we gather, but it's those that do, whether 2 or 2,000. It's those that have become the living stones, building the all-inclusive kingdom of God. It's not the event, it's the people on the mission. In fact, God never even called it church, and those in it, Jesus never even called them Christians. This is beyond categories and denominations, boundaries and boxes. We are simply followers, trying to place our footsteps on that beautiful, narrow path together. People of the way, the ecclesia, the gathering, the community in communion with the greatest commission. The good news distribution. Not for the sake of ourselves, but for the sake of everyone else. We meet, we catalyze, but we don't remain inside the walls. Using earthly gifts for eternal purpose, shaping culture with selfless passion, flawed and faulty, yet by grace we found God. And now we find our purpose with people, and this is the place for every person. Anyone, anywhere. You don't need a membership fee, no initiation, no qualifications. Grace says you belong already. Christ showed us what true love is. Now through this, we show it back. With his life, Christ bought our right to be called children of God. And this is the eternal global family, sisters and brothers adopted through the only Son. We are the mirror called to reflect the Father's heart, the light on the hill, not selfishly consuming, but forever consumed by Christ. Taking what God has done inside, outside. The world needs this. This is what we are meant to be.
Community. That's what the church is about. The church is not about this auditorium or in one location. It's a community. It's a community of people drawn together because of their love for Christ. Everybody in the world wants to belong to something. And we're watching it. What's happening into our country is we're going from one extreme to the other. And we're dividing. And it's happened within the church. We have all these different denominations arguing who's right and who's wrong. So the world doesn't see community. So they're all looking for something to belong to. And that's what God created the church. We looked at in class today that our unity is in the love of Christ. Sometimes we choose other things. Last week, we looked at the need for fellowship. And Stephen did a good job of showing that we need fellowship. We're designed to have fellowship. We're designed to be the body of Christ. Another word for that is a need for community. We need community. There has to be community. There has to be this fellowship. if the world's ever going to find Christ. In the world, it's all singular. It's about I. But within the church, it's about him. And in response, we're drawn together because of that unity. God has given us his community. We call it the church. But sometimes I think we have this wrong understanding in our mind about what church really is. We'll say it, that the people are the church. People are plural. Church is singular. There's a community. God has given us the tools to build that community. That's why he's given us those tools. He gave some as apostles, and some as prophets, and some as evangelists, and some as pastors and teachers, for the equipping of the saints, for the work of service, for the building up of the body. Each and every one of us has been given gifts. And sometimes we just rely on other people's gifts and we're not using ours. A body can't function that way. It isn't about going and hiring or going and hiring a preacher or going creating a clergy. That's how the world sees it. But God hasn't designed his community that way. Within any community or within any family, everybody has to be part of it. Everybody has to be doing what they've been gifted with, or it's dysfunctional. And if everyone is doing that, what are they going to feel like? They're going to feel like they belong. And they're part of that community. The body is a unit, though it is made up of many parts, and though all its parts are many, they form one body. So it is with Christ. How many bodies are there? How many churches are there? From the way God sees it, not the way the world sees it, not the way we see it, but if we want to understand it and we want to impact a world that's dividing, the world's got to see this body. A singular body made up of many parts and everybody pulling together for that common goal. Schuyler talked about it. He gave us the Great Commission. When Jesus dies on the cross, he created unity amongst believers. Stephen called it fellowship last week. I'm going to talk about it as being the community. Put this in your mind, every human being wants to feel like they belong to something. And where else should they really belong? But united in the love of Christ. But if we're not all understanding and seeing the body in that way, how is the world going to see it? The body is the community of Christ. We take the Lord's Supper every Sunday to remember that we're part of this universal body. Homestead COC is just a congregation amongst this body. And congregation just means it's a group of people. This is our little community within the big community of Christ. And if we have little divisions all through us, well, how does that look within the whole body? And then what does the world see? Cracks, divisions. They don't see the unity that comes from the community that God created. The church is the community of Christ. It's not these walls. It's not this location. It's not governed just to Homestead. It's governed throughout the whole world. And the head of that government is Christ. That's our unity. The parts of the body are the tools or gifts He has given us for the building up of His community. We've all been gifted, every one of us. And we've all been called to use those gifts for the building up of the body. Not the building up of ourselves. Community, fellowship, that's the church. We're going to be looking at 1 Corinthians 12 to 13, the first verse in chapter 13. And I want us to look at 9 illustrations of community and how those tools and how Paul is trying to explain to a church that's totally divided the unity they have. First, the analogy in verse 12. For even as the body is one and yet has many members, all the members of the body, though they are many, are one body, so also is Christ. The analogy he's going to go into is the human body. What part of your human body is not important? What part of our human body doesn't connect with each other to make the body work? That's why Paul is picking this idea of a human body. If my right leg didn't want to get out of bed today and my left leg did, I can't divide myself. It needs both. My right leg doesn't work so well, so the left leg picks up the slack for it. So as we're looking at this, I want you to think about your body. And sometimes parts of our body, they don't work real well, but the rest of the body, what does it do? It helps so that other body gets strong enough to do whatever it needs to do. That's community. It's not based on any one person. It's not based on any individual. It's based on the gifts that God has given each and every one of us for the building up of the body, the community. The human body functions correctly when all the parts are working in unison. What happens if they're not? We say we're sick, and we go to the doctors, and we get medicine to try and get that part working again. But do we do that within His body? Or are we just concerned about the gift that we have? The second thing, entering the body in verse 13. How did this all come about? For by one Spirit we were all baptized into one body. whether Jews or Greeks, whether slaves or free, and we're all made to drink of one Spirit. Who put this body together? Who put our physical body together? Who wonderfully knitted each and every one of us together? Who put the body together, the church? Who gifted each and every one of us with gifts for the serving and the building up of the body, instead of relying on a couple of people or a couple of things. Clergy is not a word in God's economy. It doesn't exist. It is God who has joined the body together. We're assembled here, all of us, here and afar. God has brought it all together. For what purpose? The building of his community, his church, his body. Stephen was absolutely right. Fellowship is essential. The church doesn't function without it. It's dysfunctional. And it won't serve God's purpose. Third, equal but different parts. For the body is not one member, but many. If the foot should say, because I'm not a hand, I am not a part of the body, it is not for this reason any the less part of the body. And if the ear should say, because I'm not an eye, I am not part of the body, it's not for this reason any the less a part of the body. I think sometimes each and every one of us feel like we're not part of it, and we don't think that we're supposed to be active because I'm not the preacher, or I'm not the aimer, or I'm not the person running the pantry, or I'm not whatever. That's not how God sees it. That's us choosing not to be part of the body. Because God gifted every human being with different gifts to do different services for the building up of the community, the body of Christ. No part of the body should feel excluded. All parts are needed, verses 17 to 20. If the whole body were an eye, where would the hearing be? If the whole were the hearing, where would the sense of smell be? But now God has placed the members, each one of them, in the body just as he desired. And if they were all one member, where would the body be? But now there are many members, but one body. What if someone holds their gifts over someone else's gifts? It's the opposite of what we just looked at. There are no gifts that are unimportant. There are no gifts that are not needed. It's the unison, it's the working together of these parts of the body that makes the body function. It won't function any other way. It may continue on, but if my breathing isn't working really, really well, because my lungs are full, how well is the rest of my body working? It won't work. God has designed the dependence of each part within the body or community. Do we feel like we're dependent upon each and every one of us here in this congregation? Then we're not seeing it the way God sees it. We need to depend on each other. Without that dependence, the body functions incorrectly. Fifth, the parts are dependent. The eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need for you. Or again, the head to the feet, I have no need for you. On the contrary, it's much truer that the members of the body which seem, keyword, seem to be weaker are necessary. Do we put greater emphasis on different gifts? Every gift is important. Every gift was designed by God. How important is it then? How well does the body walk without the little toe? How much honor do we give to the little toe? Do we spend a lot of time sitting in front of the mirror, making sure our hair is right, or putting makeup on our face? We have little concern for the little toe? Are we picking certain parts of the body to be more important than others? They're not. It's not the way it works within a community. It's not the way it works within the body. And it's certainly not God's design. Misguided importance, verses 23 to 24. And those members of the body which we deem less honorable. Who deemed it? We deemed. On these we bestow more abundant honor, and our unseemly members come to have more abundant seemliness, whereas our seemingly members have no need of it. But God has composed the body, giving more abundant honor to the member which lacked. Where's God placing the importance? I may think my little toe is unimportant, but God doesn't. That's why He gave me 10 toes. That's why He gave us each other. See, fellowship is more than just coming together. We had great fellowship yesterday. It was fun. But it wouldn't have been as fun if someone else wasn't there. Because every person that was there brought something to the table, brought something to the day. Because each person's unique. And the more we understand that, the more the community will run together. Instead of this part of the community going here and this part of the community going there. And when the community is running together, then the world says, I want to belong. But when the world sees all disunity, why do we want to belong to that? That's what's going on in 1 Corinthians 14. Read it. appearance? Is it how I look or how I dress that's really important? Is it what color my hair is, or the makeup I put on my face, or the eyeliner? I'm not saying we shouldn't do that, but could we live without the eyeliner on our eyes? You'd still be alive, wouldn't you? How about if you didn't have a liver? So what's more important? And where are we giving the emphasis to? The appearance or the liver? What happens if I don't have a liver? I get pretty sick. I don't see it. It's not something I think about each day before I eat or drink something. But how important is that liver? The preacher? Is that what makes up a congregation? Get a good preacher and you're going to fill the whole place up? Or is it the member that's more important? They're both important because they both serve a purpose. And who gave that purpose? God, for his body, his community, so the world would see his community. Yesterday, a lady came up to me when we were there, and we were all sitting there getting ready to go. And she looked around at the diversity of our group, and she said, "Thank you for bringing them all up here, because they got to see something different." What did she see? Community. It attracted her enough that she wanted to come up and say something to me. I didn't arrange it. I think it had much more to do with Linda and Stephen and Karen. But that's what she saw. She saw community. And that community could be even more and could be even stronger if we see it the same way. 7, unity is a must. Stephen said it last week. Fellowship is a must. Unity is a must. It's all part of that fellowship. Go read again 1 John chapter 1, 1-3. What do we have? Fellowship, unity, one body. Then he ends it up and says, count it great joy because you have what? Community. There should be no division. There's a key word, no. We got to achieve that. You know, we talked about it in class. We hang on to some of the commandments of God really strong. The other ones we don't want to deal with. There should be no divisions in the body. But the members should have the same care for one another. And if one member suffers, all members suffer with it. If one member is honored, all members rejoice with it. Now, you are Christ's body. An individual. We're tied together. And if it's dysfunctional, just like my body, if my lungs aren't working or my legs aren't working or if my liver's not working or whatever, what's going to happen with my body? I might struggle on through the day because the whole body suffers. Do we really understand that? Do we see ourselves as one body, connected, or we see ourselves all individually? We come to church so we can individually make it to heaven one day? It takes a proper understanding. And God has appointed in the church, first apostles, second prophets, third teachers, that miracles, then gifts of healing and helps and administration and various kinds of tongues. And all the apostles, are they? All are not prophets, are they? All are not teachers, are they? All are not workers of miracles, are they? All do not have the gifts of healing, do they? All do not speak in tongues, do they? All do not interpret, do they? No, we're different. But we've been given a responsibility to use the gifts we have for the community that we're in. Or it becomes all apostles, or all teachers, or all workers of miracles. It takes every part for this body to function correctly. The Christian world is so divided. It's certainly not God's plan. And that's what the world sees. We only have our little small part here. We need to work on this. That comes from a proper motivation. But earnestly desire the greater gifts. And I show you still more excellent way. If I speak with tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I have become a noisy gong, a clanging cymbal. Goes back to our class this morning. When there's no love, when we're not thinking about everybody else before we think about ourselves, Paul says, you're only beating your own drum. We're doing absolutely nothing for the body. We're doing absolutely nothing for the cause of Christ. And our world shows it. Community is important. Without community, we can have all the knowledge of the Bible inside and out. It'll do us no good. Because we're not going to give it to anybody. Nobody is going to want to hear it. So, Stephen, you're right. Fellowship is really important. It's God's community. It's his body. It is not the walls that is the church. On the contrary, it's the tearing down of the walls that is the church. We come into the church with walls. We're to be tearing down those walls because of a common love that we have for each other and a common understanding that we need each other, that we can't do this on our own. Are we tearing down the walls? If we tear down the walls, we'll build a better community. If we build a better community, people will want to be part of it. It's, for those of you who are a little bit older, it's Cheers. It's that bar where everybody knows everybody's name. And every character in that show is totally different. Totally. But they come into that bar setting. It's not about them getting drunk. It's about they all know each other. You have a community there. That's what the church is. We need to build a better community in this country. We need to build a better community in Homestead. We need to build a better community here. If we're really going to follow Christ. Let me start. On the 14th, we're going to have a Valentine's Day party. Invite somebody, like Lowell said. Everybody invited one person, and they saw us all working as a community. You think maybe they want to be part of it? Let's think about it. I'm not spanking us. I just think we can do better. What do you think? If you have any needs, whatever the need is, it doesn't matter. You need some, you don't have food, or you have spiritual needs, or you have physical needs, or whatever your need is. That's what this invitation is for right now. That's why we come together on Sunday, so we understand that we have communion with each other and that we're a family, that we're a community. But if you don't express your needs because we're all these little islands all over this auditorium, we can't function. You come forward when we sing.